This is our digestive model, and we chose the food pasta because pasta has carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Carbohydrates can be found in the pasta and tomatoes. Lipids can be found in the pasta and the meatballs. Proteins in meatballs and the gluten from pasta, and nucleic acids in the meatballs and tomatoes.
So the first organ of the digestive system is the mouth, and it is represented here by colored pencils as it is colored in. And the mouth is an oval-shaped cavity that is located inside of the skull, and it consists of many structures such as the masseter muscle, which is a muscle that is attached to the mandible, and the hard palate, which is above the oral cavity made of the maxilla bone, and then the soft palate and tongue, which touches the roof of the mouth. So, a function that occurs in the mouth is mastication or chewing with the teeth, which is a form of mechanical digestion. And the masseter muscle pulls to masticate or chew, and the soft palate closes off the nasal cavity during swallowing to ensure that the food moves below, and the tongue moves the food inside the oral cavity for swallowing and pushes the food back into the pharynx. And then the second accessory organ that is in the mouth is the salivary glands, which is represented here by the cotton balls. And these glands are located in front of the ears, and the saliva produced is secreted into the mouth from a duct near the upper second molar. Each parotoid gland has two lobes, which is the superficial lobe and the deep lobe. And the function of the salivary gland is to produce saliva and aid in chemical digestion.
So, ingestion is the first process of digestion. After food enters the mouth, it is chewed and mixed with saliva, which contains enzymes like amylase that break down starches in food. The saliva comes from salivary glands in the mouth, and chewing helps increase the surface area of food and allows for a bolus, which is a soft mass of chewed food and saliva, to be formed.
The next organ that is a part of the system is the esophagus, which is represented here by the plastic straw. And the esophagus is a muscular tube that is about 25 centimeters long, and the bolus travels down this tube to get to the stomach. And nerves in the esophagus, the tissue in the esophagus, sense the bolus and trigger peristalsis, which is a series of muscle contractions that move food towards the stomach. And then once that occurs, the organ that comes next in the system is the stomach, which is represented here by the balloon. And the stomach is a sac that is made of smooth muscle that consists of four regions, which is the cardia, fundus, body, and pleurosis. And it churns the bolus with peristaltic contractions, which is a form of mechanical digestion. And it also performs chemical digestion by producing hydrochloric acid, which activates the pepsin enzyme. And so the muscular stomach walls break the bolus into smaller chunks by pounding it, and then hormones in the lining trigger the release of acids and enzyme juices from the stomach wall, which dissolves the food and breaks it down into proteins. And after being in the stomach, the bolus is turned into chyme, which is a frothy liquid.
So, to kind of summarize what Vani talked about, the second step of digestion is movement or peristalsis. So, the tongue and pharyngeal muscles push food from the mouth into the esophagus through the act of swallowing. And during this process, the epiglottis, which is a flap of tissue at the back of your throat, closes the trachea, and food is then propelled into the digestive tract through the involuntary process of peristalsis, which consists of muscle contractions that push food from the esophagus into the stomach, and this process also plays a role in mixing food with digestive juices. The next step afterwards is mechanical digestion or physical digestion. And in the stomach, the walls and muscle physically break the bolus into smaller pieces, and this process usually takes between minutes to hours, and it doesn't change the chemical nature of the food. Mechanical digestion starts at the mouth through chewing, but it continues in the stomach, and the goal is to make food smaller and increase its surface area and mobility. And then the next step is chemical digestion, which starts at the mouth with enzymes like amylase, but it continues in the stomach and small intestines. hormones in the stomach walls release acids and enzyme-rich juices to digest food. For example, chief cells secrete pepsin to help break down proteins, and parietal cells secrete hydrochloric acid, which creates an acidic environment for pepsin to work in. The end result of chemical digestion is chyme, which is a mass of partially digested food and digestive secretions that is expelled from the stomach into the duodenum of the small intestine.
So to describe how our chosen food plays into this, the digestion of pasta starts with the mechanical breakdown of the pasta noodles in the mouth, where teeth grind up pasta to increase its surface area so it can be chemically broken down. Like Ria said earlier, the saliva in the mouth covers the pasta for two reasons: to coat the pasta with enzymes like amylases that start to break down the pasta's carbohydrates, and to help the pasta slide down the esophagus. The stomach continues to mechanically digest the food, but it also starts the protein digestion of meatballs and the gluten from pasta with the help of pepsin.
The next organ in the digestive system is the liver, which is represented by colored pencil as it is drawn on. And the liver is located in the upper right-hand portion of the abdominal cavity, which is beneath the diaphragm and on top of the stomach, right kidney, and intestines. And it is shaped like a cone, and the liver is a dark reddish brown organ that weighs about 3 pounds. So the function of the liver is to produce bile, and bile performs the chemical digestion of fats, and it usually ranges from a yellow to a bright green color, and it has a liquid consistency. But bile may crystallize and form gallstones, which then blocks the bile duct. And then the next accessory organ that is a part of the digestive system is the gallbladder, which is also represented by colored pencil. And it is located on the right side of the abdomen, and it is a pear-shaped sac that lies near the lobes of the liver. And the gallbladder stores the bile that is produced by the liver, and then when a food that contains fat enters the system, the gallbladder will release bile into the small intestine. And then the next organ is the pancreas, which is also represented by colored pencil, and it is located across the backside of the abdomen and is behind the stomach. It is an elongated tapered organ where the right side is called the head and is the widest part of the organ, which lies in the curve of the duodenum. And the pancreas produces and secretes alkaline juices into the duodenum to neutralize the acidic chyme.
So after chemical digestion, or during chemical digestion, another important step to note is that juices and bile, which is produced by the liver, help break fat into fatty acids and glycerol, proteins into amino acids, and carbohydrates into glucose, and this breakdown helps facilitate the next step, which is absorption.
So the next organ in the system is the small intestine, and it is represented here by the light pink strings. And the small intestine is a smooth muscle tube that consists of 3 regions: the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. And it is a short C-shaped region that is about 10 inches long in humans. And the small intestine absorbs macronutrients from the intestines into the bloodstream to be used by cells to store and make energy.
So in absorption, the food that has been broken down into nutrients can only be used by the body if it enters the bloodstream, and this occurs during absorption, which mainly takes place in the small intestine. Villi, which are small finger-like projections on the walls of the small intestines, increase surface area and allow more nutrients to be absorbed. The cells in the small intestine have membranes that contain many transport proteins to get the monosaccharides and other nutrients in the blood where they can be distributed to the rest of the body. And extra fibers, water, and dead cells enter the colon, which drains out the remaining water.
Going back to pasta, the pasta is now partially digested, and it moved into the duodenum. This is the first part of the small intestine and where most of the chemical digestion of carbohydrates and lipids occur. The walls of the intestines are lined with villi, which contains blood vessels that absorb the products of carbohydrate and protein digestion. The villi also contain lymphatic vessels that absorb the fats from pasta. The duodenum receives secretions from the liver and the gallbladder, primarily bile, that chemically digest pastas, fats in a process called emulsification, and the pancreas, primarily carbohydrates, proteases, and lipids that chemically digest all three macromolecules. The duodenum also leads to the jejunum and the ileum, the other two parts of the small intestines.
And just as an addition to the small intestine is almost 22 feet long in adults, and that makes it the longest part of the digestive system. And so the next organ that is in the system is the large intestine, which is represented by the dark pink colored pencil. And the large intestine is approximately 1.5 meters long and is composed of the parts, the cecum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, and sigmoid colon. And it has a very similar structure to the small intestine. And so the large intestine absorbs water from chyme into the bloodstream, and the chyme then turns into stool, which will be excreted by the body. And then that brings me to the next system, or the next organ in the system, which is the anus, which is also represented by colored pencil. And this starts at the bottom of the rectum, which is the last portion of the colon. And it is used to excrete all of the substances that have not been digested by the body, so the stool. And it is at the very end of the gastrointestinal tract and the last opening.
So the final process of digestion is egestion or defecation. And during this process, the stool leaves the colon and enters the rectum, and the undigested materials are then removed from the body as feces through the anal canal.
So finally, the remains of the pasta then travel to the large intestine, where bacteria can further digest the waste of the pasta, and some water may be reabsorbed into the body. After most of the nutrients and water from the pasta are absorbed, the waste enters the rectum and is expelled through the anal canal. Hopefully through this video, the digestive processes and organs make more sense. Thanks for watching.